Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. My name is Andrew Claudio, a.k.a. GMAC, and it is time for another Knicks matchup, this time on Wednesday night against the Denver Nuggets. We are coming in with the vibes sky high at the moment after a blowout signature win of the Memphis Grizzlies. You remember the other day when I read all of the accolades, all of the stats, and where the Grizzlies rank in all the top fives around the league. Little different today. There's still a very good offensive team on the court. We'll talk about their defense as well when it comes up. But the Knicks are starting to, at least after one game, and we'll see what happens with the Kings, maybe the last two games where they've sent two teams into a tailspin after their two back-to-back wins, in which they scored 143 points in each game. First time since 1965 that they did that. We'll see if they can do it again against this Denver Nuggets team that is a lot better than the last time we saw them. So let's start here. They're 28-18. They're 28-18 on the season. They did start 11-10 and are now 17. They're 17-8 in that the since that stretch, the last 25 games, fourth in the Western Conference. I mean, look, I can read all of their rankings. They're fourth in offense, seventh in net ratings, fifth in assist percentage. Much like the Knicks, they're very efficient. Third in effective field goal percentage, third in true shooting, fifth in pace, fourth in 3-point percentage. Like they're living at the rim, first in rim frequency. The story of this team is that Nikola Jokic is averaging 30, 13, and 10. Every year that I think, all right, he's won enough MVPs. There's no chance he can outdo himself and win another one. He seems to outdo himself and potentially win another one. And we'll see if they actually get it this year. Joining me to preview this matchup, an old friend, and when I say old friend, it used to be part of the rivalry with little brother across the bridge, joining me now of the Denver Nuggets, of their digital content team, also their writing team, Mr. Matt Brooks. Matt, welcome back to Knicks Film School, first of all. And I know this is the Nuggets pod. We're going to talk about the Nuggets extensively, but this is the first time that you've been on our airwaves since the Knicks and Nets made a trade. And as someone who covered the Nets for a long time, the last time that you were here was when the Knicks played the Nuggets last year. And since then, the Knicks traded all the picks for Mikal Bridges. So I have to just get your thoughts there, your reaction to the fact that not only did the Knicks acquire Mikal Bridges, but they acquired him from the Nets, knowing what that rivalry means. What was your reaction when it happened?
When it happened, I was just kind of like surprised, I guess, in a way, because I never felt like, well, it's weird. So like I didn't like I watched like 10 games of Bridges because like they picked him up and then I got the job with the Nuggets, I think like late February. So I think I watched like maybe 10 games. And one of them was when they played the Knicks for the first time and they lost by like 40. And it was like this, I just remember like being like, oh, like the era is over. Like it's done. Like it was so symbolic because they like, I think they'd beaten the Knicks a bunch with KD Kyrie, and then they lose KD Kyrie. And it was like, it just felt really like symbolic and eerie. And I was at the Garden and I was like, well, this is really odd. And then I'm out of there in like a month. So yeah, I didn't really watch him much, but I was surprised because I, you know, again, I'm not like tapped in with the Nets probably the way I was, even just like from when I was in Brooklyn to when the Bridges trade happened. But I was surprised. I kind of felt like they wanted to keep him and build around him. And I could never figure out like, all right, is that like posturing or are they actually into it? But to me, I always kind of got the sense like, all right, they want to be this like, you know, they don't have their picks, so they're going to be this like sort of mid-tier team and try to bring in like another star. That was kind of always how I thought it would operate. So it like really caught me by surprise in a way. Like I remember being like, whoa, that's a big freaking trade.
It especially had to be surreal. And I don't remember when you first started covering the Nets, but from the moment they got KD and Kyrie, and then obviously Harden, it seemed like the momentum shift was like, oh, the Nets, we're like the New York of it all didn't really matter. Like, no, they were never going to take over the city. Yeah. But as far as where they are in the NBA hierarchy, the Nets were the contender in town.
I don't think they lost. I don't think the Nets lost from what I remember.
What do you mean?
When they had KD, Kyrie.
Oh yeah. When they played the Knicks, there was like a 5-year losing streak, and now the Knicks have won 9 straight against the Nets instead.
Right.
But the surrealness of it is to go through the KD, Kyrie era, and then you leave town just as it, I guess, ends, and now here we are. The Knicks are the contender, and the Nets are in a full rebuild with the help of the New York Knicks.
It's so weird.
Gave them all their picks.
It's so weird.
The fact, like, I was thinking about this the other day, like how much difference 5 years is. Like, I'm 36 and may or may not have had the conversation of like, oh, when I'm 40, like, wait, that's like 25 years. No, that's 4 years. To think about what 4 years from now could be. And it's like, well, 4 years ago, Katie and Kyrie and James Harden were all Nets, and I was campaigning for Julius Randle to win most improved player. So what a difference 4 years can make. For you, what a difference, I guess, 2 years can make, as you went from a Nets team that was rebuilding to one of the perennial contenders in the NBA, one of the more just fun, great players to watch, Nikola Jokic. And an interesting team coming into this season, because last year, I remember talking to you that the feeling was no matter what happens, like they're in their championship defense year, like that's what the season's about. They're defending a title that they just won. They feel no one can beat them in a 7-game series. And then it really wasn't until the last quarter of their season that people actually thought they could lose in a 7-game series. So if I can go back to that to start, how much, not did that shock you that the Timberwolves won that series, but how much did that, like, did the weeks and months afterwards, how I guess did Nuggets fans process the fact that, like, oh, we were like very into, like, it's how we're going to do against the Celtics, and then all of a sudden the season's over?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nuggets fans like were it's a Game 7 loss at home. I don't think you're like, oh man, no, whatever. Get them. But in the sense of, like, we still, like, I still left last season even after the Celtics had their parade. Yeah, like, I still would have picked Denver to win in a 7-game series against them, even though 2 series earlier they lost. You know? Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you can kind of like do that a lot. I think, like, well, I'll answer it 2 ways. One, it was not the most painful Game 7 loss I've seen, because Nets Bucks was worse. Mm-hmm. That was way worse. Like, the thing about Wolves Nuggets, I'm not trying to say it wasn't a bad, like, it didn't suck or whatever. Like, it was not like great to blow a 20-point lead, but you kind of knew where it was going with like 5 minutes left in the fourth. And that Nets Bucks game, that's the most painful sporting event, maybe like since the Patriots comeback in the Super Bowl. Like, I'd maybe put it
Atlanta.
There.
Okay. Yeah,
against Atlanta. But like, I think that was the most painful thing I've seen in sports, because there's like this shot. We're like talking about the Nets. This is a Nuggets podcast, but I'm sorry.
We're talking about painful Nets losses. I'm here for
it. It was, it was just a crazy loss. Like, I remember in the building, KD hits this shot everybody there was like, oh my God, they're advancing. And like, the feeling was, all right, like, if they can advance, they can get Kyrie back, and it's against this Hawks team. I don't know how good they are, all this stuff. And then, you know, it kind of just felt like, oh, they got over the toughest part against this Bucks thing. Turns out his foot's on the line, and they're just gassed in overtime. And so for me, that was worse, because like it just felt so close. And at least with Nuggets, I know they were up 20, but you felt the momentum change like the second half started. And then by the time it kind of got down to, like, I think it was like 6 or 5 minutes left, when Gobert hits that fadeaway off the glass, you're just like, all right, well, this is done. Like, it's done. Was I surprised by it? Yeah. I mean, I think, like, I was surprised. Well, I'll put it like this. After the Lakers series, I was a little concerned, because they just, like, they didn't pop. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of looks a little bit like how Boston's been at times this year, where it's like the pop was missing. And that series was really odd, because it just, like, they won in 5, but it wasn't like a series you felt like really good about coming out of. And then they dropped those 2 games against Minnesota. And the fact that they were kind of able to, like, dig themselves out of that was like the first time I was like, oh, like, this is it. They hit their whatever. I don't know what was going on those first 6 or 7 games, but this is it. They found, like, whatever, their rhythm. They found whatever it is they needed to find. They got it. And then to eventually lose that series, I think that was probably the toughest part. Because if you just looked at that Lakers series, you go, well, it kind of makes sense. They didn't look like they were really humming. The offense was like way, way lower just in terms of offensive rating compared to where they were in the championship season. But I think because they dug themselves out of the early 0-2 hole against Minnesota, like they have so many times in the past, like you think about the 2-3-1 comebacks in the bubble, I think that was the part that was kind of tough to stomach. And we got that like iconic Jokic game at home, game 5, where he had like 40, I don't know, some ridiculous numbers. I think that made it kind of hard too, because now that game's not really going to be like remembered maybe the way it should.
The Jokic ridiculous stat lines kind of blend together at a certain point, at least as far as I'm concerned, that he has so many of these games where, like, again, he's averaging 30, 13, and 10 at the moment, which, look, we're not even mentioning his 3-point percentage, not even mentioning his steals per game, which he leads the team in his top 5 in like the NBA at the moment. Legacy is an interesting thing. Like, the last thing about that Nets team, KD hits that shot and it's a 3 and they win a title. And like they have his legacy is cemented. We're never talking 100%. About how he had to go to Golden State and to win a title. He's got this one Brooklyn championship, probably, where 14 people attended the parade, but still, like the fact that KD gets his title in Brooklyn would have cemented his legacy. And instead, there are still questions all these years later. With Jokic, 3 MVPs and a title already cements like a significant top whatever ranking. But as I start to talk about this year's team and this year's season, like how, like the MVP conversation from my outside vantage point seems as if like it's just, let Shea have it. We want Jokic to win another title. We want the Nuggets to win another title. So that way his legacy can be cemented even further as a 2-time champion with all these MVPs. I mean, you tell me, just like the vibes around the team and maybe the fan base in general, how much of this season is about like making sure this guy has as many accolades possible, aside from obviously the team accomplishments, but making sure like last year could potentially be looked at as a blown opportunity. How much is it that they don't blow it again this year?
I mean, huge. I think like when you have somebody playing this well, you want to capitalize, right? Like that's the end goal. I don't think anybody would be upset. I wouldn't be upset if he got a 4th MVP. That's amazing.
Right.
Like I want to throw him in the top 5 all-time conversations if he's not already there. Like I want to get crazy with it. Like let's get nuts with it. You know what I mean? Like who
you bumping? Hold on. Who you bumping? Let's have that. Who you bumping? Woo! So MJ, LeBron, Kareem, I'm assuming you have ahead of him.
Yep.
And then 4, 5.
I mean, it had to be like one of Magic or Larry, and that feels crazy. But
we like haven't said the name Bill Russell yet. We haven't said the name Kareem yet.
I have trouble though with some of the like really. Yeah. I don't know. I just think he's in there. Like he's got to be. He's so good. He's so good. I think like. But again, like I would say definitely like the legacy or like just like when we look back at everything, it's like it's not incomplete. Like 3 MVPs and a title is great, but I think there's like more that he's able to accomplish. So, and that's just me. I don't know how other people feel, but I love doing this stuff. I love sitting down and being like, yeah, I think he's a top 5 player ever. And you're like, all right, well then why? You know?
The glaring thing about this season, when you go to his on-off, not more his on-off because that's been ridiculous forever.
Yeah,
but his 2-man lineups on NBA.com or Basketball Reference, like they're all positives. There's like nobody that isn't a positive when they're on the court with him. Like I used to compare the Warriors. I don't know how much of a baseball fan you are, but you're in Denver, so Coors Field has the elevated the sea level, right? The effect that it has on the baseball. Usually stats are elevated at Coors Field.
Right.
Jokic himself is Coors Field. Like if you play with him, it's like you're playing at Coors Field. So I used to compare the Warriors. And it's like, yeah, but you're on the Warriors. Of course, your numbers are elevated. That's how I am with Jokic, which is why this Russ thing is so fascinating. To the Knicks fan that doesn't know, he's been in the starting lineup for a long time. Him and Jokic together are plus 14 in their possessions this season. I read through some of their top 5 rankings and some of their stats, and they're living at the rim right now. First in rim frequency, 10th in rim accuracy. The 3-point, they're not taking a ton of threes. They're last in the NBA in threes per game, but they're third in makes per game. Like they're toward the top in percentile. So when they take threes, they make them. I mean, are they playing differently? Because I know they were a high transition and a high rim team last year, but toward the bottom in accuracy. Like, how much is Rush helping their rim pressure and I guess their rim accuracy, especially playing off of Jokic this season?
Yeah, I wouldn't say like he's changing their shot profile, because like Jokic teams are historically always pretty low in threes. I mean, even the year they won, they were not like a high volume 3-point team. And Jokic is like an unbelievable post player. Just unbelievable. So you're always going to be like a team that lives at the rim. If you're not, like, if it's not him scoring at the rim, all right, it's a guy cutting baseline or a guy in the dunker spot. Like, right, they do that stuff with AG all the time. They're doing a lot more with CB or Christian Brown and Russ cutting baseline when help comes. So they're always going to be like definitely a 2-point skewed team. It's funny, actually. This is like the chat, like the talk of Nuggets Twitter right now is the importance of threes. Are we losing the 3-point battle? And I love numbers. I love analytics. I generally skew towards, I really like threes, but I also look at them and I go, well, they're like 4th in offense. They've scored 130 points. I think only the Grizzlies have scored more times of having these 130-point games. Like, I don't watch them and go, oh man, like the offense needs to be changed. Or like if it's working and they're efficient and they're 3rd in effective field goal percentage, I don't really think the issue is like, oh, the offense isn't working. So it's like, it's funny. This is like a whole, you've really hit on the right topic, because this is like a thing this week. But I think where Russ has helped, and you hit on it, is that he pushes the pace, and the Nuggets are I think they're 5th right now, 4th, 5th in pace. They have never been top 10, I think, since Jokic was made a starter. So he is like completely changed how much they push. Jokic will obviously like he'll grab rebounds and do those like full court ridiculous outlet passes that you have no idea how he makes. But Russ is like grabbing rebounds and just like getting things into high gear. And then they have guys that can like finish these plays. Like Christian Brown is leading the NBA in fast break points. So they have the guys that can like complete that, guys that want to leak out. So it all kind of comes together. But I think Russ has been the biggest catalyst that we've seen, is just how much he's like pushing in transition, which is what they were missing for most of last year.
So my question there with the transition, as it could kind of pertain to the Knicks, and that's their overall numbers in transition defense aren't terrible, but the last couple of games, it seems like teams that get out and run just take advantage of a defense that's not set. Like this Kings team that came in on Saturday, the Knicks got off to like a 15, 16 point lead, and then the Kings got out and ran, and that's how they got the lead back down to 2. Before the Knicks went up by almost 40 on the Grizzlies, we saw a ton of them, just every rebound, every made shot, they're just getting out and running. It's why Taylor Jenkins runs 11 men in that rotation, because he's just like, we're running. It's like the U.S. hockey team that like they were like 30-second shifts in the 80s. Like, yeah, because you're gonna try and run the other team ragged over that stretch. Has that been a formula to their success? I mentioned that they're 17-8 in their last 25 games. Is it just simply Jokic is awesome, or are they actually, is there anything more to them running more and getting out in transition being part of their success?
Well, I think like the running has been there since like game 1. Like they've just been like a good transition team. It was like first weekend, they're first in transition. We're all like, whoa, like where did this come from? Just stayed. So that's who they are. I think the big thing that's shifted for them, Jamal Murray's definitely perked up. He's like 58% true shooting, which is about what he was last year, just for the whole season. So he's been that since I think December 1st, which is good. Like league average for point guards is 56, I believe, something around that. So it's good. He's playing a lot better. He's had some like big performances, which is like kind of what you want to see. He's looked a lot more like himself.
Gotta love the play better button. It's my favorite thing that teams do. That's like, oh, what's different? Oh, they're playing better. Yeah, that's what happened. Mikal Bridges, what's different about him? He's playing better. You know?
It's I don't know. Like it's always like I love when you kind of go through that and you're like, oh man, what was like going on early in the season? You're like, oh, like this guy just like he just didn't have a good first month and he was like,
yeah,
really
that was it. When the Knicks last played the Nuggets, like, oh, Jamal Murray's shooting significantly below his career average. I wonder if that'll regress. It didn't that game, but clearly it has since. So two things I'm very fascinated by. And I understand where you're employed, so I'll be careful how I ask this. But obviously, as a Knicks, I promise that I will make sure I will set you up for success here. I promise. As someone who covers the Knicks, look, I have my quibbles with Tom Thibodeau. It's impossible to say, he's done a bad job as Knicks head coach. I think he gets more criticism than he deserves, but I also recognize there are just some shortcomings and some things that I wish he'd changed. And recently he has changed them. But for the most of the year, he ran an 8-man rotation. I then look in Denver and you tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels like most of the year they've run an 8-man rotation and that their minutes aren't as crazy as the Knicks because the Knicks have a little bit more health, but like it just wouldn't shock me if there's like 4 or 5 guys between the two teams tomorrow that play 40 minutes if the game is close. Yeah. So how much are they still running an 8-man rotation? Like the Nuggets depth coming into the season was a question. And, to the Knicks fan that isn't watching a ton of Nuggets games, like what can they expect from the Nuggets rotation on Wednesday night?
It kind of depends. They'll go 8, 9. They didn't play DeAndre Jordan last game, but he's been pretty consistently in the rotation this year. He's had a good year. It typically 8, 9, and they've kind of been that way since the beginning. They've tried out other guys like Dario Saric played for a bit. Hunter Tyson was in the rotation for a second. So like they've had different guys in there. And I actually think like one of the things I think that Malone's done really well this year is he's like really experimented with stuff in terms of like trying different guys together. So there's just been a lot, like there's so many different chunks of the season where it's like, he was playing Russ and Jamal together. And then, now Russ and Jokic are sharing their minutes a ton. And now we're starting to see like Jamal and AG with the bench. And that's kind of a combo that he's trying. So I think he's like done a really, really good job. I think if you could like point to something maybe that didn't happen as much last year, it was that experimentation. Granted, they had the best 5-man starting lineup in the league. So I don't.
What really are you experimenting with? Yeah, just play that. Yeah,
right. So it's like I don't know. That's the other side of that. But this year, like I've really liked the experimentation. It's just cool to see different guys play together. But I think we're getting to that point where the rotation is starting to narrow a little bit, and we're really starting to see these like 8 guys, but DeAndre might play, so it might be closer to like 9.
Bit of a rhetorical question, but is it fair and reasonable to say that losing KCP was significant and it was going to take 2 or 3 months for them to find a new 5-man rotation that works to the not to the level of what it was last year, but like you lose a core piece of a championship starting 5. It's not going to be immediate that it succeeds, which is why if you're now in January and starting to experience some success, that it probably just took a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think there's obvious changes. Like he's such a good. I always like when I think about KCP, I think about like how much he takes off time early in the possession. So like he's gonna deny on handoffs. Like he's gonna press full court. He's just like he bothers guys, like he gets into guys. And he's a really good screen navigator and stuff. So that's hard to find. It's a hard skill to find in the NBA. Like guys that can get skinny around screens are just really hard to come by. So that skill was always going to be tough for them to find. And to be honest, you're not going to like replace a KCP defensively, like just in terms of like the specific skills that he brings, which are really, really unique. You don't just find that, right? Like that's every player has different skills. Are really got it. His skills are really rare, like that type of point of attack defense. So I think there's been a shift of like, all right, how are we defending? Which ways are we defending? We don't want to change our scheme. We're not going to change how we play Jokic and pick and roll, but we are going to have to find different ways to defend. And I think that like this year, the defense has had good moments. It has not had as good moments. But the flip side of that, you lose KCP, like 3-and-D, great player in that regard. I think part of the reason why they're playing so well in transition and scoring so much that way, and they're actually scoring according to offensive rating. I know like offense goes up, pace goes up every year, but like their offensive rating is the best it's ever been with Jokic, which is crazy. They a lot of that comes down to they are getting so much in transition. They're getting more possessions in general. And a lot of that is because of somebody like CB, who's going to get out, Christian Brown, who's going to get out, run, leak out. That stuff like really matters. It just gives you more possessions in a game.
So I do have some questions about the defense that you bring up, and we could start to transition to talking about the Knicks and this game on Wednesday night. The last time the Knicks came into Denver, they put up 145 on the Nuggets, a season and I believe franchise high 145 points. It's ironic that I say that was their season high and franchise high. Their last 2 games, they scored 143 each. So this offense is rolling at the moment. You look at the Nuggets rank 19th in defense, and if you look over that stretch, this 25 game stretch where their offense is second, where it's like they're getting 121 points per 100 possessions, like their offense is through the roof, they're still 18th in defense. Like their defense hasn't in the macro improved statistically, but I mean, you could tell me what, like, how much it actually has changed or gotten better over the last 25 games where they're winning. My question is that I see, like, I go to the opponent rankings on NBA.com and look at like what they're bad at. And the 2 things that stand out, they are 30th in 3-point attempts allowed per game. So teams get shots up on them. And 30th in opponent assist percentage. So teams that like to move the ball, that rack up a lot of assists, you know, that's a thing that hurts them sometimes. So you can get them out of rotation if you're taking advantage of ball movement. There's a Knicks team that I believe they're 17-1 in games that they have at least 30 assists in a game. So if they're hitting shots and they're, you know, actually moving the ball, this may be a recipe for success for the Knicks. I guess my core question here is, when it's looked the best, like when the Nuggets defense has looked the best, how has it looked? When it's like, oh, this is a good defensive game for them, what have they been able to shut down, and how is that translated to winning?
Yeah, probably opponent threes. Just like rotations behind the ball, I would say, are a lot better.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like such a cliche, but it's just like more forceful. And I could sit and be like, well, the low men were more. I mean, I'm like,
we like that
more
stuff
forceful.
Here. Yeah,
like, it's probably the best way to describe it. Like, and that's the thing. Like, the defense it's had like beginning of the year is kind of lax, and then this stretch, and it really was before these last 2 games on the road against Chicago and Minnesota. Defense was good. Like, I don't know if it was top 10, but it certainly was higher than 18th or whatever you just said. So yeah, I think the good parts is it's just more forceful and maybe there's more communication. But you just kind of feel the team a little more is probably the best way to put it. So I can't, I don't know. It feels like such a silly answer, but that's kind of it. That's what I've noticed.
How much drop coverage are they playing?
I would say like Yoke this year. Oh God, I got to think about this. I get these seasons mixed up. I don't have those stats in front of me, so I wish I did.
You're good.
But,
your eye test works. Yeah,
maybe. I would say it depends. Like Jokic he won't play like a deep drop. He'll kind of play like this like shallow drop, and then when they really, I think when the team's really good, he's way up. It's probably the best way to do it because his hands are like so ridiculous. Like he's a deflections magnet. I mean, you mentioned earlier he's 5th in steals.
Yep.
But I think when they're really at their best, it's him playing all the way up. The problem is he just is like, he has such a ridiculous load on offense. I mean, I looked this up the other day. Like in the championship season, he was 47th in total field goals, which is just like, it's not like the greatest way to look at it. But like this year, he's 9th in total field goals, right around there. So like, he's just doing more. He's shooting more, which Some of that is playing with Russ, somebody like that who gets in the ball more, but a lot of it really is like they're playing through him more. He's doing more as a scorer. And I think it's really hard to be like, hey, can you just play up for like 40 minutes and make sure you're way above the 3-point line every single possession? I just think that's kind of hard. So, but yeah.
It might also hurt your rebounding a bit, but that actually goes to my question about, or a question about Westbrook, that the Knicks are able to play cat in this deep drop, or they have been playing cat in this deep drop, which it gets more conservative. He's been a rebounding machine on the defensive boards this year, like averaging close to 14 a game, may actually still be averaging 14 rebounds a game, because he's like at the rim on every shot, and him boxing out and just being big allows for, him to get every board. My question has been, maybe you want to play him a little up more so that way teams aren't taking advantage in the mid range or just with threes. The Knicks are second worst in 3-point percentage against this season, because teams know, well, Cat's, if we pick and roll, he's just going to play a deep drop. And recently they've been playing him much higher, playing much more aggressive. And because they have someone like Josh Hart, who is like the second best or best rebounding guard in the league, like Russell Westbrook, I wonder, has that been helpful? Like Russ's rebounding being, a skill and impactful for the Nuggets, has that just like helped them this year in potentially with their defensive coverage? And I lied, by the way. Jokic is 4th in the steals per game, not 5th in steals. So yeah, nice. he got better apparently over the course of this conversation.
I mean, I don't know. First of all, I'm like fascinated. I did not know. Like this is. I'm sorry. I should probably.
Yeah, you're good. You're
good.
I
don't know everything about.
You're watching the Nuggets. This is why.
So, by the way,
happy to help.
So fascinating because, and I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent. It's not about what you asked. That's fascinating because the whole like rub with him in Minnesota was that he couldn't like play drop. Like you couldn't figure out a scheme. So it's interesting that that's worked out like relatively.
Oh, let me be clear. It sometimes doesn't. When the Knicks lose, it's because teams are taking advantage of him in a deep drop, which is why we've cried out for that's going to have to be more aggressive. And Mikal Bridges has spoken to it recently. His inability or just needing an extra second from Cat before he conservatively drops when he's trying to get around a screen.
Okay,
like teams know, just like let me get Mikal Bridges out of the picture because Cat's not gonna. Cat's got 2 feet in the paint, Yeah,
I think there's a way to do it, and it's all about like timing and stuff like that. And that's the other thing. Like we talked about KCP earlier. Like it just takes a really long time to build timing with some of these guys. I mean, like Denver was, I think they were bottom 10 bottom 15 in defense the championship year, and then they shoot up to like a top 5-ish defense in the playoffs. I know there's less teams, but it goes up, right? Like the defensive rating goes up, and it's like it really might have just come down to reps. I mean, it's like that's KCP has only been there from the beginning of the season, so if you get more and more reps throughout the year. I'm sorry. What was your question? This is
no. We're observing what's working and how the Nuggets rebounding seems to be a skill that they make up for not having like a strong rim protector. But like you got one shot at this possession. Like Jokic's rebounding being so impactful is a thing, and then you add Russ to the mix, and like they're the 3rd in rebound percentage this year. So it adds up being a significant skill. 4th in rebound percentage. But like that's been the Knicks formula this year. They're like top 5 in rebound percentage too, where you got one shot at this on this possession. It might be against a very deep drop coverage, but I gotta be honest, you brought up the Nuggets championship run and how they were 15th, 16th in defense and 4th in offense that year. It's a model Knicks fans have been hoping this year after years of like, we got to have a top 10 defense. It's a Tom Thibodeau coach team. And coming into this year, it's like, all right, like let's just follow the Nuggets model from a couple of years ago where the defense just has to be good for 4 rounds in the playoffs, but the offense is otherworldly good, and hopefully we'll follow that model in the playoffs. Is that like obviously we don't have a Jokic on our team, but would that be a model you would suggest Knicks fans be comfortable emulating or hoping that the Knicks emulate?
I mean, I think that's kind of what the Nuggets are doing. No?
Yeah, the Nuggets are trying to emulate it too.
And they round into form. So I would say yes, because I think they're probably not the only team doing it. It's kind of funny. Another tangent, but remember when Boston went on this crazy run after like a slow start to the year, and they go on a crazy run?
Yeah, 2022, the year they went to the finals. Yeah,
the year they went to the finals, and then every team the next year, it's like they're 500, and they're like, yeah, but hey, it could be us,
Boston,
you know?
Boston. You want to know something even crazier about that Boston run? I know the point it started. They were 22-22, and then went like 31-12 the rest of the year, whatever it was, 31-8. Their 22nd loss was a buzzer beater by RJ Barrett on January 2022.
I remember that game.
Off the glass, and that the Celtics blew a 24-point lead in that game. One of the biggest comebacks in Knicks history. And it apparently turned the Celtics season around, all in the bittersweet moment, that 2022 season. Glad the Knicks have moved on from rosters like that. And I know you haven't had a chance to watch them a ton. So I actually want to turn the pot over to you for the remainder of the time. Just any Knicks questions you got going into this matchup. Last time they played,
like the defense has gone up from when they last played the Nuggets. Actually, here was my big question. So I had to think about where these two teams were when they played last. But I remember New York kind of had a shaky start to the year, and they get this big win in Denver. Was that like the turnaround the season win, or was that because I remember being in the building being like, oh damn, we might have just changed their season.
It was one of them, I'll say. Okay. If I can choose the inflection points for the team this year, I gotta be honest, they go both directions. And part of it is a vibes thing, but then there is a performance thing that I try to judge. The Nuggets win was their signature win for most of the season. And at that point, it was their biggest win of the year for sure. Okay. Then they were beating some bad teams, losing to some good teams. Like they had lost to Houston, lost to Atlanta. Then when the NBA Cup was still a thing, they had to play Orlando when Orlando was still somewhat healthy. They didn't have that. They had only lost Paolo at this point, but Franz was playing well. And they played the Magic at the Garden, and they won by like 30. And it was oh wow, that's a top 3 defense that the Knicks just put up 130 points on. That's their signature win. Then the NBA Cup happens, and in front of the whole world, they lose to Trae Young and the Hawks in a game that, once again, everybody thought Trae Young owned the Knicks in this game. Yet the team scored 108 points, and the story was actually Dyson Daniels turning Jalen Brunson's water off. But then that was it's an inflection point the other way. Yeah. Then they come out of the NBA Cup break and they play Minnesota in Minnesota on Cat's return to Minnesota, and they blow them out. Cat has 40-20, and the Knicks win 9 straight from that point on. They play this game against the Thunder while both teams have 9+ game winning streaks. Knicks are up 14 in the third. They lose obviously to the Thunder, who ended up winning 15, 16 straight. Yeah. But it's okay, that was our litmus test. Yeah, we're back. Then a week later, they lose by their worst performance of the year. They lose to the Thunder by 30 at home, and it's we're nowhere near their class. That last week was fool's gold, and now ironically, they're coming off their most signature win. And now this Memphis team that came in on Monday with a lot of Knicks fans, we should be Taylor Jenkins, coach, the way he does things, and playing 11 guys, and 2 rookies are starting. And they get run off the court. And so it's why it's so funny, the ebbs and flows of an NBA regular season, that now the Nuggets come in here. The Knicks have had so many peaks and valleys. They could lose on Wednesday and the vibes are now back in the shitter. But I also know a win, and it's so we're never going to lose again, and we're going to sweep every round of the playoffs. That's just that it's been very up and down, but obviously, to your point, they have gotten better with every peak and valley that's happened.
These teams have a lot in common. That's
really okay.
They really do. Yeah, I think so.
I'd assume the biggest valley this year was ending the Wizards' losing streak in Washington.
Yes, and then you have that big turning point moment where they're winning. 9 out of 11 or so.
Oh, they just won 8 of 9. Yeah, going into this 2-game stretch. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the Bulls lost yesterday where you're oh, well. So it's been a little similar. They've definitely been, I would say really they've the Nuggets have turned a corner I mean, I like 2 not great losses, but I felt a lot more encouraged since probably that Wizards game, to be honest with you. But I definitely think that it hasn't been this like smooth ascent, where in the championship year, Jamal Murray has this like game winner against Portland. And it was like Dame hit a big shot, and then he comes back, he hits this big 3, and just like flips their season. I don't know if it's been like that for Denver, because there still have been these dips, like they play Cleveland. That's a great example. Like you mentioned the Thunder game, like they played Cleveland at home. They're kind of down by like 20 by most of the games. So I would not say it's been like this, turn the corner, but it's a more gradual kind of, probably is how you'd put it with the Knicks too. Like it's been a gradual, yes, things are improving. You're kind of getting how they're playing. I'll ask you this. Where do you think, and this is like some straight, could be on ESPN right now.
Let's do it.
Knicks?
Okay.
Where are you putting them in the East? Where are you hierarchying them?
I think if you're doing the East.
Okay.
So here's the tough part of asking me specifically this question.
I know.
Like, all last season, there's this doubt I had in Boston that, like, I get it. I know what the net rating is. I know how much they're blowing teams out by. I would take the Nuggets over them in a 7-game series. What the Knicks became in the month of January after trading for Anunoby, and they went 14-2, and they're blowing teams out. They beat the Nuggets during that stretch. That's the last time we talked, I believe, was that game.
I think we talked about OG a lot.
Right. So I went into the playoffs, like, if the Knicks can get OG and Randall back, I just want to see what it is, like what it's like. And the Knicks ran out of healthy bodies. And like the Celtics, I can't take the banner down. It's there forever. It's 4 playoff rounds against a Miami Heat without Jimmy Butler. And apparently they never got Jimmy Butler back. A Cavs team that lost Mitchell midway through, a Pacers team that lost Halliburton midway through, and a Mavericks team that never had home court in the playoffs last season. Like I'm adding footnotes to an earned title, but I don't think there's this impenetrable force that the Knicks are like, oh, we can't be. I know what opening night was, but it's why next Saturday is going to just mean so much. The Knicks play the Celtics at the Garden, and I know what the Celtics have been this year. I don't think they're that bad. But it's not so much. I think the Knicks are ahead of Boston in any hierarchy. They're the champs until proven otherwise.
Sure.
Can I see it? Is just the point. Can I see the Knicks at their best and Boston at their best? And then if Boston wins by 20 anyway, it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, there is like a thing that they're better than the Knicks then. Fine. And then the Cavs, I'm not calling fraud.
You skeptic?
It's impossible. It's impossible to see like 38-9 or whatever they are and be like, prove it, because they kind of are.
Yeah, right.
There's still a part of me that can't get out of my head what happened 2 years ago in the playoffs. They're better. Sure. They're different. The Knicks are obviously different. But I mean, the Knicks have just punked them so many times when possible the last couple of years. Last year, Jalen Brunson left the game after 40 seconds, and we thought like he popped his Achilles and the season was over.
All right.
This is in Cleveland. And then Deuce McBride checked in, didn't check out the rest of the game. Shout out Tibbs.
Yeah.
And the Knicks won in Cleveland. Like they didn't have Mitchell, fine, but Josh Hart hits this 3 in the corner and then like pops Donovan Mitchell's chain and then walks back up the court. Yep. And it's like, oh, like we own them. Like, so there is that mentality of like, yeah, you're winning all these regular season games. That's cute. But again, the month of February is interesting. The Knicks play the Celtics on the 8th, and then they play the Cavs the first Friday after the All-Star break. So I'm ready for some litmus tests. But I would respectfully put them ahead of the Knicks, but I don't think there's this huge chasm between the Knicks and any of those two teams. I will just say I think the Knicks would lose, like not necessarily a non-competitive series to the Thunder, but I have a great respect for the Thunder, and when they get in ass whooping mode, it's why I'm kind of hoping the Nuggets would knock off the Thunder on the way to the championship, because I would like the Knicks, if they're going to get there, to not have to play the Thunder. Yeah, it's weird to say probably to you, but I'd rather play the Nuggets than the Thunder.
No, that's fair.
I think the Knicks would win, but I think they'd have a better chance than playing the Thunder.
I think that's a better matchup for them. Just like how they play. Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at stats. Knicks and Cavs are, I think, 1 and 2 in pull-up 3-point percentage.
Inefficiency all year. It's effective field goal percentage and true shooting. They're both 1 and 2. Yeah,
which is. I mean, it kind of comes back to like the Jokic coverage thing. Like, how much can you play him up all game without him, like, without him falling over from exhaustion? You know what I mean? So it seems like I personally think Cleveland's really good because I've watched a couple of their games. I watched like them play the Thunder twice. And then I watched them play Denver. And a lot of the times, like these things that we evaluate off of, sure, we'll watch games on off nights and stuff like that. But like a lot of times it's like, here's how they played my team, right?
Yeah.
So I look at Cleveland, I go, that team's really good. They were up by like 20 in both games. I look at them, I think they're really good. And they've been slipping a little bit. They haven't had Mobley, but that's interesting to like hear a different perspective because I'm like, I think they're this sick team and all this stuff. So
let me be clear. Yes, they are very good. One of those things where can I see it was the Boston conversation. Like, can I see it with the Cavs? It's like, I got to see it. Like, you got to beat the Knicks 4 out of 5 in a playoff series or 4 out of 7 in a playoff series, obviously. For me to then be like, oh, they did it.
Like when you're like, you see a team shooting like 41% from 3, you're like, all right, like I don't doubt like you guys are going to be a top 5 team in shooting, but like 41% is crazy.
Like, it's honestly the reason I'm kind of waiting for the Mitchell Robinson of it all. I personally don't think he'll. Part of me thinks he's played his last game as a Knick, whether they trade him or he just won't come back healthy. But the chance that he comes back and can be healthy and return a playoff series, I mean, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, just the lights were too bright, and Mitchell Robinson was getting double teamed in playoff series. So that way Josh Hart or whoever could come in and get rebounds. So, one
of the biggest change, like, like how like certain, you'll reach a point with somebody and you're like, he kind of really changed like my opinion of you. Like, it's not that I didn't like think he was going to be good or anything, but he's one of the big ones this year where I'm like, oh man, this guy's like really like he's filled out and he's like pretty aggressive now offensively, which is not. I remember watching the first couple of years and never feeling like that. He's one of the big risers for me this year.
Most improved
might be that way. I don't know about that.
It's him or Cade, basically. Probably.
Yeah, Cade. I guess, right? Yeah, probably. I think Cade will probably win.
Yeah, probably Cade.
That's so crazy. He's the number 1 pick. I mean, really?
Mobley was 3 in the same draft.
Yeah,
so,
I guess. But I don't know who I'd have for most improved this year. I'd have to look at odds and stuff like that. Yeah. Maybe Cade. Maybe Cade. Hero is an interesting one.
Well, Miami in general is an interesting team for accolades. Now, speaking of teams, I appreciate grabbing a shovel and pouring dirt on. But all right, you have any other Knicks questions heading into this game?
Who do you think's gonna win? How about that? That's a good one.
Oh, I've never actually been asked that. I almost looked for like how teams could win.
Yeah.
I think the Knicks are rolling at the moment. They just, I know the Nuggets lost 2 straight. That doesn't indicate how they'll play in this game, but there's just, Tibbs went to a 9-man rotation. They got a couple extra days. Like Tibbs is a guy that like he's not going to put you out there if he thinks you'll hurt the team, and he needs to have a couple practice days, but they like never practice because they're always playing. So they got a couple days off, and it allowed them to have some practices and get the actually create a bench unit. And I mean, just a lot's working at the moment. This last week or so, they've won 4 straight. Like they finally beat the Hawks with a much more aggressive defense. They won this Brooklyn game where just nothing was falling and they played like ass. And then these last 2 games, like 143 points each game. I would lean Knicks in this. I'd like they're favored according to all the betting sites. I'm not gonna rule out, but Jokic is awesome though. So that there's Jokic taking advantage of Cat for 4 quarters. That also now you here's my last question for you then. This narrative that like how Cat guarded Jokic in the playoffs is why the Wolves won. When you hear that, you say what?
I mean, I think he did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely wouldn't. I mean, I think his like Jokic's field goal percentage was like 10% better against Gobert than it was against Cat. So like,
okay.
I don't have any qualms with it. Is it why they won? I don't know about that. I think there's a multitude of things that did not go well. I think honestly, like it's like to me, it's a testament to how good Jokic is like Minnesota. Like, yeah, we could say, oh, like Cat roughed him up and really made him uncomfortable on touches. And it's like, yeah, like he played pretty physical with him. But ultimately, like what really came down to it is they just started selling out on the paint. They were like, Game 7, Jokic, I don't remember what he shot from 3, but I don't think it was like a great percentage.
2 of 10. I'm staring at it now. Yeah.
Perfect. That's great. I love this. You're on top of everything. He's like, they sell out, right? They're like, all right, we're just going to give Jokic that 3. And the whole team was tired. Like Jokic taking 10 threes is not, the Wolves solved him. To me, that's more like, he's exhausted. And I remember watching it being like, this dude is gassed right now. But what's great about Jokic is he comes back the next year and it's like, he actually leads the league in catch and shoot 3 point.
Yeah, 3-point percentage. It's insane.
Who is this guy, man?
Yeah. I got asked a trivia question last week. The guys in the NBA with at least 4 attempts per game, who are the highest percentages, and it's Kennard, it's Jokic, it's Levine. It's like AJ Green, it's Gary Trent, like these guys with these insane, but Jokic is second, basically.
Crazy.
Like, he's shooting 47% from 3.
That was like I think that was one of the big things that like why Game 7 maybe didn't go the way that the Nuggets wanted. And like, I don't know if we've asked him that this year, but I'd love to know if that was like a big thing for him, is if he goes into the summer, he goes, man, I went 2 for 10 in like an elimination game. And then he's like, all right, well now I'm shooting 47% from 3. It's like, what?
That actually that's funny, but it actually is like you said, a fascinating thing, because I don't remember ever hearing anything like he worked on in the off season. He's just like, because he's so excellent. It's like, I went home, I was awesome. Like I went to back to work, I was awesome. That's clearly my Serbian impression. But
we played in the Olympics. So he played in the Olympics.
That's the thing. He did go to the Olympics
think that was
this summer. So the Olympics is where he discovered his 3-point shooting, or was it just that he stayed in shape throughout the offseason?
They said one of our assistants was working with him over the summer, but they've been very like Jokic said, I'm not telling you guys anything else than that. So I don't know. I'd love to listen. It's one of my I'd love to know more about it. It's probably one of the things I'm most curious about this year, because it is a pretty unbelievable development, to be honest with you.
Look, I'll be honest. The stats we just went through and the ball conversation we just had for 50 minutes, like that's great and all. The fun part for me is the actual human element of sports, where did Jokic actually have to think about a Game 7 where he went 2 of 10 and 8 from 3 and it cost him potentially his team going to repeat as champions? Like Jalen Brunson 2 years ago against those Miami Heat had a costly turnover. They were down 2, got double teamed, had a wide open Josh Hart from 3, and he decided to try and pass across the key, and it never found a pocket and got stolen. The next year he comes back and he's just like spoken to this. Like he thought about that turnover all off season, and Josh Hart, because he's an ass, like joked like, yeah, it was wide open. And he was like, he said on the room, I was thinking about like my costly turnover to end the season. And Josh Hart was like, man, that sucks. Yeah, I was wide open. Yeah. And so what happens last year against the Sixers, the Knicks are tied. The double team comes along. They're in Game 6 in Philly. Double team comes. He hits Josh at the top of the 3-point arc, hits the series clinching 3. And then on the next pod, he's like, oh, you actually hit me this time. I was wide open then too. I swear, man. Like Josh Hart can do some dumb shit sometimes. He's the funniest Knick in the history of the franchise.
He's hilarious.
He might be the most entertaining human that's ever like played basketball too. Yeah, you know, like I maybe up there for like I don't buy jerseys. Like last one I think I owned was Melo, but like I think that would be the direction I'd go if I ever got another Knicks jersey.
That's fair.
Know? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, he's a Yankee fan, so I guess we have beef at the moment. So
damn.
Yeah. Although, did you see what happened on social with the two football teams? So Jalen is an Eagles fan.
Okay.
And Josh Hart's a Commanders fan. And they obviously just played for a trip to the Super Bowl. Josh Hart went to the game and the Eagles went up like by 30 in the fourth quarter. And Josh left before the fourth quarter started. And Jalen's making fun of him. Like, Josh Hart left before the fourth quarter. And like Karl-Anthony Towns is an Eagles fan. They're like, answer your phone, Josh Hart. Mikal Bridges is an Eagle fan. They're all making fun of him. Jalen posts a picture, like a screenshot of Josh Hart's location, like one of the Apple maps where you can see where his location is. And it's like 30 miles away from Lincoln Financial Field. And he's like, look at where Josh Hart is. And Josh Hart quotes tweeted, I had to leave early. Somebody has to play defense tomorrow. You know,
you guys, you might lead the league in vibes.
In vibes, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
That's why this fan base, when they complain, it's like, you don't understand. I talk to other teams. Like, we have some of the best vibes in the league at the moment.
I mean, I think Cleveland, speaking, I keep talking, it's only the biggest Cleveland over. They have great vibes. I follow a couple of reporters and they always show like, you know, like kind of clips in the locker room and stuff like that. I'm like, it's good vibes, team, man. Stuff matters. Matters probably more than any of us fans understand it or anything.
Let me double check. What are they at now? They're 37-9. I can't discredit it. I just like, what have you done?
No, I get it. You got to
like, what have you done against us? Like, you got to beat us next. You know?
Yeah, I got it.
I'm at.
I get it.
So I can't ask you who you think is going to win because again, who your player is. But I will thank you, Matt, for making the time to come on the Knicks Film School pregame show.
Yeah.
Before you get out of here, all your work, please plug it for the fine folks at home listening.
Yeah. I'm pretty good about throwing stuff on my Twitter, which is Matt Brooks NBA, should be below here. But if not, if I don't remember to put something up, you can find everything on nuggets.com. All my written articles, everything like that. And then I do a good amount of other content than just writing and stuff like that. So I would subscribe to Nuggets YouTube. We have a couple series that I take middling to large roles in. We have a big film series that's like completely my whole thing. It's my big thing I contribute to the Nuggets. It's called Nuggets Knowledge. So that is definitely something you can check out. And if you're on TikTok, I do breakdowns for them all the time. If that exists in a week, you know, I don't know. As far as I know, it still
is. Yes. Yeah, it's been touch and go in the last 8 days, but yeah, it's been, we'll see. Follow just in case.
I don't know. Yeah, but follow Nuggets on TikTok. I'll do breakdowns for them. Little 1 minute breakdowns, kind of fun. So that's pretty much where you can find me. But follow Nuggets everywhere. Why not?
There you go. Follow the Nuggets everywhere. But listen, I hope the next time I see you, we're breaking down game 1 of the finals. How's that?
Give me that. Let's do that. Let's do that.
New York, Denver. Why not us? Why not us?
That's a great finals. I think that's a great
enjoy
finals.
it because I think they'd have a chance. Whereas there are other teams coming out the West that I would just be like, oh, this is nice participation trophy. You know,
as an NBA fan, we need a good finals. We need a really good finals. I love the 2023 finals for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But like it wasn't like. I don't think it was a hard.
Very clearly midway through game 3. Oh, this is over. The seed thing is done. Got it. Yeah. They found the elixir. Got it.
Yeah. Last year, I don't even want to talk about last year. So I'd love a really good finals this year. Let's make it Knicks Nuggets.
Here for it. Adam Silver, set it up. Get it again. Not. I remember who I'm talking to. I can't fully accuse anybody, but let's make it happen. NBA. Yeah. Why not? Why not us? Matt, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you to everybody for tuning in for another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dug it, please head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. A reminder to join us this Saturday at T Squared Social in New York City. Just a hop, skip, and a jump from Grand Central Station, Grand Central Terminal. I keep getting that wrong. Grand Central. How's that? We'll be celebrating 1 year of watch parties, giving away a ton of fun prizes. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the podcast and have left a 5-star rating and a review. And you got to leave the restaurant a 5-star rating and you should be good. So join us this Saturday for Knicks against the Nuggets. I will have a pregame pod ahead of that, so you can join me for that. But obviously a lot of content until then. John will be on the post game for Knicks Nuggets, so tune in for that. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll speak with you soon. Peace.